The Trump economy continues to defy all liberal economist standards. It's shattering all of their expectations and soaring above expectations routinely. The original GDP estimates for quarter two of this year were set at 3%. Then they were revised to 3.2%, which was already good news. And now 3.8%, leaving even CNBC reporters completely shocked.
Now, on the GDP side, this is our third time around the block on Q2, and we see a really solid revision, 3.8%. I'm a bit shocked, to be honest. Usually the revisions, as you get to second and third, become smaller and smaller. So 3.8% would be the best quarter going back to, and we have to go back a ways here, till 4.4, and that was the third quarter of 23. Now, it is important to point out that if you look at the first quarter final, down 0.5%, there's a balance there. But the balance is moving in favor, and momentum is moving in favor for better growth.
And so, yes, despite all of the liberal fear-mongering about the effects of these Trump tariffs, not only is the stock market still performing incredibly well, and still, by the way, at record highs, but on top of it, our GDP growth is performing way better than expected. The month-to-month economic analysis that I continue to review every single month are always pointing to this. And people point to the low jobs reports in August. That was a useful tool to get Jerome Powell to finally lower the interest rates. And not everything is perfect, mind you, but all of the economic markers continue to get better and better, despite what the liberals would have you believe. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, I love this guy because, to be straight up frank with you, he is a bit of an over-the-top Trump butt kisser. But he does it in such a funny way. I mean, if Republicans had a rhetoric machine, it would be Howard Lutnick, and he's very needed for that reason. And his energy's great, and he's a smart guy, and he knows what he's talking about. This was his tweet in regards to this. President Trump's leadership just delivered 3.8% GDP growth, revised up a full half point. Biden's economy could never reach 3%. President Trump's first full quarter as president delivered quarter two 2025 at 3.8% growth. What's driving the Trump economy? A manufacturing and software boom across the heartland, lower regulation freeing businesses to grow, cheap energy powering households and industry, petrochemicals and pharmaceuticals strengthening the supply chain, and research and development driven by our tech industry. President Trump's America First policies added $100 billion and fueled our extraordinary economic growth. The experts, and he puts experts in quotes there, rightfully so, because they've been nothing but wrong, doubted it. Trump delivered it. And in the Oval Office yesterday, you could even hear Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent being referred to by President Donald Trump, touting off all of the economic progress made for quarter two. Take a listen to this.
Could you just tell them what the number was? And how
it was 3.88% growth, the biggest in years. And the important thing is the president says this is going to be non-inflationary growth, just like it was in his first term. So strong growth, low inflation, real wage gains. And to the question on small business optimism under President Trump last week hit a multi-year high. So small businesses, Main Street is back.
Main Street is indeed back, or at the very least, it is returning. And he also brings up inflation, which is something that I want to also talk about here, because inflation has not skyrocketed like they promised us that it would because of the Trump tariffs. Now, of course, here on this channel, I've always done my due diligence when it comes to researching what the effects of tariffs could possibly be. And there's always been an element of risk and mystery to it because we haven't seen tariffs implemented for generations here in America. However, looking back at historical data and analysis of tariffs and studying the history of the tariffs, and also just an understanding of what I would consider slightly above basic understanding for economics, I've always from the start said on this channel that tariffs would be de facto deflationary. And I've been mostly correct on that. And the signs that point to that, the weakening dollar value, which I accurately predicted in one of my first videos on this channel back in March, that was a no-brainer to see coming. Of course, the liberals use the weakening dollar value as a source of panic, but they just don't understand what the long-term effects of tariffs and our continually strengthening economy are going to be. The weakening dollar is inconsequential in the long term. By now, inflation was supposed to have skyrocketed, and they wanted that to happen because don't ever forget, inflation was at 9.1% or even 9.2% under the Biden regime. It was the worst we've ever lived through, at least somebody my age. It was terrible times. So they want that to happen so badly while President Donald Trump's in office. They hate that his economy is succeeding. Inflation should be at like 10% by now, according to them. And mind you, they also predicted that we were going to be in a stock market crash by August. They also predicted we were going to find ourselves in a second Great Depression by August. That month has came and went, and we are approaching October with no Great Depression in sight. Trump has continued to make excellent decisions when it comes to that, and so much so that even head chair of the Fed, this goober, Jerome Powell, has finally admitted that the Trump tariffs are not negatively impacting our economy and are actually producing billions of dollars to help promote economic growth. Take a listen to this.
We're now collecting a good bit of revenue. The government federal government collecting a good chunk of revenue, at a $300 billion a year pace. And the question is, who's paying that? And the candidates for paying those tariffs would be the exporter, the foreign exporter, or someone on our shores. It could be a company or a retailer, or someone who's using the imported product to manufacture something, or the end consumer. And so so far, in its incredibly early days, it doesn't look like the overseas exporters are carrying the bulk of it. It looks like it's that middle group. It's retailers and it's importers, and they're not passing along to consumers that much of the cost. So the actual effects on inflation have been quite modest so far. It's really not. It's a small amount, but I mean, for example, I mentioned that core PCE inflation is 2.9%. Maybe 0.3 or 0.4 of that is tariffs. So it's not the big factor. It's not a big inflationary thing.
All Jerome Powell would have had to have done to come to this conclusion months earlier was subscribe to American Advocates and watch my videos, and he would have known all of this to be true, where I covered things like import costs, export costs, who was really going to be paying the tariffs, what was actually going to be happening when it came to implementing these tariffs, and how they're not necessarily a guaranteed tax on U.S. citizens, and how they're not necessarily going to cause inflation and could actually be de facto deflationary, and how the U.S. dollar value was going to weaken at first because of them, and how the stock market was going to soar in spite of them, and how generating all of this revenue could lead to President Donald Trump finally being able to do stuff like abolish the IRS. All of that could be found right here on American Advocates. For months I've been reporting on stuff like that, and he's just now in late September coming to these conclusions. If you don't want to be left out of the loop about what's happening like Jerome Powell, the head chair of the Fed, has been for the past 7 months, then you also should subscribe right now to American Advocates for more content like this. However, if you're a liberal and you're convinced that a second Great Depression is coming any day now, please make sure to dislike this video and never come back. Unfortunately, Jerome Powell, when he decided to cut rates this month in September, decided to only cut by 1/4 point. I genuinely believe he still wants Trump's economy to fail. I think that's why he's only cutting it by 1/4. He truthfully should have lowered it by at least a full point. When you take a look at where inflation is compared to our current interest rates, it's completely unacceptable. Jerome Powell truly is too late, Jerome. This is even more annoying in ways, to admit basically that he's wrong. But then to go and only cut rate by 1/4 point, unacceptable. His chair is up next year in the midterms, and I can't wait for him to be replaced. But ideally, Scott Bessent, President Trump, have been hinting at trying to abolish the Fed, and I hope they pull that off, because the Trump economy should be miles ahead where it's at now. It's already doing well. It's already further than it was predicted to be, but it could be miles ahead if Jerome Powell had been cooperating with President Donald Trump rather than fighting him every step of the way. And President Donald Trump knows this, which is why he literally has called for Jerome Powell to cut interest rates, cut them lower, damn it. And on top of that, he points out in a humorous fashion how this is the only country in the world that gets these kind of an economic report and then watches the stock market actually perform poorly as a result.
This amount, and I hear numbers coming in today, Scott, where the numbers were very high, right?
The economic numbers were off the charts, sir.
Unfortunately, right? Because this is the only country in the world where you announce great numbers and the stock market goes down. Because when you announce great numbers, they immediately want to take that success away by raising the interest rates. Why can't they? You announce great numbers and let them lower the interest rate so you can make numbers. This is the only country in the world.
Tell me what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. Should Trump just abolish the Fed, or should he bother looking for Jerome Powell's replacement next year? Let me know what you think in the comments down below.